Hi, everybody. Thank you for those who've stayed and welcome to new members. Welcome to the Transforming Libraries for Graduate Students 2024 conference. My name is Rhiannon Jones from the University of Calgary, and I'll be moderating today's session. I will be collecting questions in the chat, and I will turn it over to our presenters who are going to discuss Gateway to the University Community, building an in-person toolkit for graduate teaching assistants. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. I'm going to share my screen here. Is that visible to everyone? Thumbs up? Good. All right. Good afternoon. My name is Alison Edwards. Let's see, let me go ahead and get to the next slide here. I'm Alison Edwards, the librarian for digital teaching and learning at NC State Universities. And Sojourna.
Hi, my name is Sojourna Cunningham. I'm the librarian for undergraduate teaching and learning at NC State University Libraries.
Okay. We're really excited to be here and talk to you all about the TA toolkit that we built. So just one quick note, Sojourna and I are here presenting on behalf of a larger team within the libraries. And then we also partnered with folks in the graduate school here at NC State, also at Delta, which is our digital education and learning technology applications group. They manage all of our university-wide LMS and learning technologies. So this was very much a team effort from us, and we're just here sort of presenting on this idea, and we'll get more to that team and how we comprised it in a little bit. But first, we wanted to do a little bit of an icebreaker, a little bit of engagement, and ask you all, what are the ways that you support graduate student TAs at your library? So I'll give you a whole minute to type your answer. That way we're not all sort of competing in the chat to get our ideas out. You get a full minute to type, and then we'll all hit enter together. So I'll start our timer now. What are the ways that you support graduate student TAs at your library? And then we'll all hit enter at the same time. We got about 15 seconds left. Okay, and then you can go ahead and type or hit enter. We'll have a waterfall of responses here that we'll take another minute to sort of scroll through and pull out some highlights and some themes here. So I like that activity because it gives us time to actually think. I know when I'm writing in chat, it sort of feels like very stressful to get all of my ideas out. So let's see. Promoting what the college is doing, so sort of collaborative efforts, study rooms and offices. TA support is sort of case by case. That feels relevant. No programming specific. Collaborating with the teaching and learning program. You have a teaching training program, that's great. Reserving rooms, spaces, instruction, consultations. Let's see, support and assignment design, that's great. Course reserves, consultations, teaching partnerships, OER resources, excellent. And then we just had a great presentation on publishing and their needs around publishing, right? So we wanted to get a sense of what folks were already doing, and sort of ways that libraries are typically meeting student needs. And because we tend to think of them mostly as graduate students, we don't think of our TAs or those graduate teaching assistants in their more teaching role. And so typical library support at our library is more around acclimating to the university, resources, things like rooms, things like the databases that they have access to, consultations with subject specialists, the things that they need for their own success as students. And graduate students, TAs, are particular, they're a subgroup, right? And they have a whole other set of responsibilities. And the huge one, undergraduate student learning, which includes, learning instructional technology, learning the content that they're teaching. I know for our groups, it's sort of you're randomly assigned, and it may or may not be in your exact subject area. It's loosely related. They are managing undergraduate student health, which is, a growing concern for many of us, and the things that we're thinking about. How do we support the whole student? And graduate students are trying to think about their students in that capacity. We need to think about their own mental health and the challenges that they're encountering, and the mounting pressures for, how do I navigate the university? How do I navigate publishing? How do I work with, within my program and my mentor and all of these things. So many things that those TAs are balancing. So we were sort of reflecting on this idea. How did TAs learn to teach, right? How do faculty learn to teach? But we're focusing on TAs right now. And I think we could ask this question of ourselves. How did any of us learn to teach? It really depends. Some of you, it sounds like, have some classes. They have programs, formal programs. Some of our departments do, but not all of them at NC State. Some of them may have previous teaching experience that they're really relying on. We have some optional trainings and certificates. But really, a lot of it is trial and error. A lot of it comes down to just sort of doing the best you can, learning on the job kind of thing. And so really thinking about how we can support TAs who are learning to teach. Learned to teach by serving as a graduate TA before I went for my MLS. Yes. A lot of it sort of feels sort of random, like, oh, well, I got experience doing this thing, and so now it's sort of wound up being relevant in this other experience that I have. So we wanted to talk, well, we will tell you what the TA Toolkit is, promise. But we did want to talk a little bit about why are we here, what inspired this idea, and why are two undergraduate librarians doing this. So Sojourna and I are part of a team who works with the English 101 program at NC State. So that is the introduction to research writing at our university. Almost every student goes through that unless they place out of it, but many students don't place out of it. So that has about 100 sections per semester, and about 40% of those sections are taught by TAs. It's a lot of students. I did some fuzzy math over here, and that's about 850 students, undergraduate students per semester, who are being taught by TAs, who do have support. They do have a good programmatic support, but ultimately have a really wide variety of experiences with teaching, and some limited exposure. Because we have that really great relationship with English 101 program, we have an annual libraries TA workshop with them. This is part of they have a 1-week sort of boot camp training that they do. These students have gone through a whole semester in a class, and then they do this in May, and they do a whole workshop on building their syllabus and building out their LMS and all that kind of thing. And the libraries get about 3 hours with them during that week. So we use that time with them to talk about what we offer in terms of instructional support. So that's the classes that we teach, the assignment support that we provide for students. And it's sort of a way for us to promote our instruction program and support. Through that, we offer, in-person library instruction on information literacy. We have a library scavenger hunt that is available for them to schedule with their undergraduate students, but then we let them do it as well because we are interested in them knowing sort of what are the resources that are available to them as students. And it's, you know, it's a really good way to build goodwill and relationships with them. Recently, we've started buying them lunch, which is a great way into anybody's hearts. So we have that existing relationship that's been going on. I was working with our colleagues in Delta, who are the digital education folks. We had a workshop where we were talking about how to use library resources in your Moodle. We use Moodle as our LMS at NC State. And we had a graduate student who showed up for that, and they were actually the only person who showed up. And we just sort of had this conversation where we were able to realize the very uneven communication around resources that are available, the very uneven sort of preparedness for TAs. And so that colleague and I sort of had this idea about GTA Day. We could do a GTA Day because I was telling her about our workshop that we do for the English 101 TAs, and every TA should have access to that. Every TA should you know, have, you know, that 1 or 2 hour sort of workshop with the libraries. And so that was sort of where we began this journey. So what is the TA Toolkit? We moved from GTA Day to TA Toolkit. TA Toolkit, we did an open house and a workshop series to introduce graduate students to the resources available to each other. Really importantly, they got to meet each other. And then we did have a series of workshops to explore instructional technology and tools, different tools that are available to them. We talked about teaching resources, libraries included as instructional and teaching resources for them, not just our materials, but we subject librarians and that kind of thing. And we arranged it across the semester sort of at point of need. So I'll play a quick video that gives you, I think, some of the feel of how the open house went, and then we'll move into talking about the workshops. So we had a colleague who stopped by and snapped a couple of pictures. Oh, you couldn't hear anything. It was just music, that was all. They took a couple of photos and a couple of you know, clips of us and the ways the students were interacting, and I just thought it really sort of captured the energy that was there. I think we were all completely delighted, and the graduate students also seemed delighted. We were all super energized at the end of the event. So at the open house, we had the Academic Success Center, we had the graduate school, we had Delta, and then there were 6 departments from within the libraries who were there. We also had the counseling center who came and talked to students, shared resources available to them, both as students and then as instructors. You're responsible for looking out for your students and making referrals if they, you know, if they encounter any troubles. You know, how do I report concerns that I have about a student if they haven't shown up to class, or that sort of thing. So it was really great. We had really high engagement at the open house. We were very excited about it. And we used that sort of as our launching pad for the workshops. So the workshops, this is just a screenshot of our website. But the key thing about this was that we combined all of our workshops, all of Delta's workshops, and all of the graduate school's workshops onto one page. And so you can see the wide variety of topics that we had here. Surviving your first day as a TA, teaching college, those were offered by the graduate school. Course beginnings and how to organize your Moodle, how to set up your grade book, how to assess student work. Those were offered by Delta, who manage the LMS. And then the libraries offered workshops like how to teach with primary sources, discovering and using library resources in Moodle, helping undergraduate students with common research challenges. And so we really met a wide variety of needs through these workshops. And you can see up here where we had sort of early semester, we had mid-semester workshops, and then we had later semester workshops. And so sort of aligning them to what things they might need at what point in the semester, because there's just so much to learn, so much to know. You can't front load everything. We sort of joked of like, yeah, I will learn about assessment sort of at the end of the semester. I just need to figure out how to show up to class, in my online class for the first part. So I'll quickly show a little bit of our timeline here. So the idea was sort of born January of 2023 at that workshop that I was doing with my colleague from Delta. We sort of let that rest because the semester is busy. In March, we sort of revived the idea of like, hey, we talked about that. Are we actually interested? Just a quick email of like, do you actually want to do that? The answer was yes. Let's see what we can do. So we had our first meeting in May. We invited the graduate school to that meeting. And then it was off to the races. We had the open house on August 17th, which is the Monday before, or the Thursday before classes started on Monday. So it was a lightning round of planning, pulling everything together. And then across the fall semester, we had 45 workshops that were offered between the three of us. And again, I will emphasize that is because so many of these things were existing workshops that we were all sort of doing independently of one another that we combined and pulled together. Some of them were new workshops, but a lot of them were existing curriculum that just we were cross-promoting and showing students that we are a support network for them, and that we're all here to support them in these various ways. So I'll turn it over to Sojourna to talk about resources.
Hello. So in terms of resources, like many libraries, there are multiple departments in our library that interact with GTAs. We have our team, which we call Undergraduate Teaching and Outreach. We have subject liaisons who are called which is called research engagement, special collections. We all work with TAs in some way as students. We also have services and spaces like our studios, access services, maker spaces, experiential learning. They all work with students as well. Our team and research engagement primarily coordinated and pulled in other departments for both GTA Day and the subsequent workshops of their choosing. After choosing our day, which, as you can probably imagine, was an experience trying to figure out which would be the perfect day for this, we used a large open space, like Alison said, the Thursday before classes began during what was called Graduate Student Week. Each team had a table in the space, as well as general open spaces for the TAs to congregate. Our program lasted maybe about 2 hours-ish, with a couple hours beforehand for planning. We provided snacks, coffee, and ice cream, and raffled off prizes. All together, because what happened is we all kind of pooled money together, the libraries, Delta, and the graduate school. We got together with about $600, but I think we only actually spent about $400. And so we had money left over after the event that we used for other events. So some of the challenges of and opportunities, I will say opportunities in a program like this is that there is no typical GTA experience. I think a lot, for me, I personally think of like grad students being faculty on steroids. They don't live on campus. They have a high sign up but low attendance piece. There are approximately 450 TAs, approximately, I'm going to say approximately 450 TAs at NC State. And there's very much a difference between departments and schools. For example, Alison and I and the team that we work with, we have a large number of graduate students that we work with, and they go through a very formalized training. And I want to say about 30 per semester, new ones per semester-ish. But there are departments and schools who only have 1 or 2 grad students. And having the opportunity to interact with these large groups of students all together, we discovered how many students were literally told, like maybe the week before, and in some cases the day before, that they were going to be teaching. And they were actively looking for places, for connections, and for resources because they felt like they didn't have the support they needed from the smaller programs. So like I said, we have programs that have dozens of TAs. Others might only have 1 or 2. Some GTAs will teach large recitation classes, while others will teach their own sections. Some programs have high-depth mentoring, while others do not. And we came into the planning of this event with the goal of not teaching to teach, but making connections to resources available throughout campus. From a library perspective, we shared the types of classes each of our departments teach, while our partners taught LMSs, talked about the LMS. Others offered mental health resources, and we went over teaching programs that are offered at the graduate school. And in terms of communicating, another really hard thing to do with the graduate school, and part of our goal was that there were so many disparate pieces. There were different listservs, there were different Google groups. Sometimes it was just purely in person. What we really wanted to do was create kind of like a master listserv or a master place that we could like reach all of the students at once. And that was kind of our goal with the actual TA toolkit itself, was creating that listserv. So part of why we said, like, why are undergraduates doing this? Why are undergraduate students, why are undergraduate librarians doing this? Like I said, part of the conversation started because we, in interacting with graduate students, we recognized how different programs prepared graduate students and seeing a very large disparity. This is just a random thing, but we have at the university, at NC State, a really, really large in-depth textbook program. And students are spending $800 to $1,000 a semester on books. And the library, for example, has all of the books. We say that we have all of the books, but so many students don't know that. So what we wanted to try to do was create a larger ripple effect of library resources so that more departments were aware of the resources, more departments were available, the TAs were available of what was available to them. And in doing so, we would make sure that undergraduates had access to those materials as well. So we want to be clear that part of the reason why we are proud of the TA Toolkit is because we built it from something that existed already, and we were trying to streamline it. So our library and our campus is currently, I mean, like I think a lot of libraries, we're wrecked by mental health issues. And one of the ways that we as a library have tried to approach it is trying to create intentional community and spaces. So our colleagues do things like Fem Game Night or Crafting Resilience as a space to build community in an environment that feels increasingly isolated. And we wanted to build more on that. So we create and maintain intentional communities. And what we wanted to do was create and maintain an intentional graduate student community with an emphasis on mental health. We also work kind of closely with prevention, which is another department that was at the TA Toolkit. They do mental health programming. So we did things like, these are workshops, Wellness in Your Toolkit, making origami books. And right now this semester, we're doing the TA Toolkit Countdown to Finals, where we'll be doing reflecting, rejuvenating, relax, and there'll be food, of course, and vision boarding. Again, part of what we wanted to create spaces for our TAs to meet each other and intentionally prioritize activities aimed at relaxation and socialization, not just purely how do you teach. And we'll talk about feedback in a little bit, but some of the feedback that we actually got from the TA Toolkit was just how appreciative the students were in meeting each other and having an opportunity to socialize with people that they normally would not be able to socialize with. Okay. So what we saw as the wins of the toolkit, a big one is the silos. So we all, like I said at the beginning, all of our departments interact with graduate students in some way. Like we all do it, but we don't always articulate how we are doing it because of the silos that are inherent in the department system. So what we were able to do in pulling us together was articulate very specifically how different departments interact with graduate students. And this was our way of trying to break down those particular silos in a very concentrated way. And speaking of silos, when we first started doing this, there was an initial reaction to some of the partners that we reached out with who kind of had a vibe of, how can the library help with graduate instruction? This is our job, not the library's job. So again, this was an opportunity to articulate responsibilities to our partners. So the library is one of the major third spaces on campus. And as such, we have a responsibility to be both a resource and a conduit to other resources on campus. I personally spent a lot of time at the GTA fair learning about what's available on campus. And we have all been, because of the information that was being provided, been able to personally make connections between like our makerspace, our prevention, or hey, this is where you should go to this you should go to Delta for this, or the graduate school for this. And I want to stress one of the pieces that I'm going to keep hammering it on it because it's so important. We saw this as an opportunity for students to socialize with each other and to build a mental health community as much as possible because of how isolating graduate school is, especially on a larger campus, especially in a department where you may only have one or two people who you can interact with. What we've said very, very consistently is that we cannot be the mental health space, but we can provide community for people to interact with each other in an intentional way. Okay. So in terms of the feedback that we got, most of it, it's on the slide itself, but they really, really enjoyed meeting people from the libraries. The fact that, they would come to our booth and they would have a question and I might not be able to answer a question, but I could walk them to the table that actively did answer the question that they needed answered. Learning about Moodle. Moodle is the big beast on campus. A lot of students come in knowing that they need to use, a lot of TAs come in knowing that they need to use it, but not necessarily having the training that they need that may come from their department. Delta being there and literally helping them set up their grade book was invaluable. And the meeting of the other TAs. I want to stress that again. I personally made so many connections between different students and different TAs, and seeing that kind of vibe and bloom was really, really beautiful. And just want to stress that all of these were ranked higher than food. And I want to add that NC State, because it's an ag campus, we provided ice cream, and the ice cream is made on campus. So for them to say that the ice cream was ranked lower, that really does mean something to us. So other pieces that came along, workshop attendance. The graduate school itself increased their workshop attendance. Now for the actual library programming, we had relatively low attendance, but high engagement. And what would happen is once someone came to a workshop, they would continually go to other workshops just to learn more about what the library could do, even if it wasn't necessarily specific to their own field or discipline. So what's next? I'm not gonna go in order, but I'm gonna say we have every intention of continuing the open house for the summer. In fact, I think we're working on dates now. We want to continually prioritize wellness and social events. Again, social and the wellness pieces, as a library, we have continually made a commitment to, and we're going to continue to do so for any of the workshops that we continue with. One thing that we have talked about is the format of the workshops themselves. Now, they were throughout the entirety of the summer, throughout the entirety of the fall and a little bit of the spring. But that requires a lot of labor, and I'm going to say Alison did a lot of that labor, and it's a lot of work to manage all of the workshops. So what we were talking about doing was maybe rather than having an end to the open house, we would actually offer like maybe a day or two of workshops, whether that be Friday or maybe even the Wednesday beforehand, if we continue to do it on the Thursday. So we're going to do kind of some guided questions. So how do you see something like this working on your campus? And before we get to that big question, I want to start with, how much does your campus rely on TAs? Because we know that there are smaller colleges who don't necessarily rely on TAs as teaching assistants, and some of them really, really do. So if you want to go into the chat, we're going to do what we similar to what we did at the beginning of the beginning of the class. Oh my God, at the beginning of the presentation. So write your in the chat, how much does your campus rely on TAs? A lot, a little, you're not quite sure. Okay. Yeah. So I see a lot. I see some saying, I see a lot. We cannot function without them. We don't have that many TAs. A lot, and graduate instructors are a bigger thing. But for those classes who use them very, very heavily. Okay. I'm going to move on to the next question. Do you know who interacts with and or supports TAs on your campus? CTLT, or sorry, we call it, that's what I used to call it, the Center for Teaching Excellence. Yes. Teaching and learning, library, specific faculty almost entirely. Just the faculty member that they're working with, a teaching and learning area that helps. Okay. I think that piece about the faculty member that they work with is an important one. Because that leads us to the next question. Enter the grad courses in their department. Are there services, teaching and learning, most faculty member, are there services that you offer to faculty, but do not explicitly offer to TAs? Now, at the very beginning, Alison mentioned that part of the impetus for this idea was, she didn't say specifically, but she did a workshop at the beginning that was kind of aimed towards faculty, and a GTA showed up. And in doing so, kind of realized there are services that we very specifically offer to faculty very explicitly, and we send it to them, and we communicate heavily with them. But they are just as useful for our TAs. In fact, maybe even more so. So again, with the question, what are services you offer to faculty, but do not explicitly offer to TAs?
And I'll add to that, the Carrie, the person I was working with from Delta, she said that they had feedback from graduate students specifically that they didn't feel comfortable showing up to faculty workshops. They didn't think that they were offered for them. They're like, oh, well, that's for faculty. I'm not faculty. And they're like, no, but functionally you are, and sort of communicating that. And so that was another way that we were able to repurpose like workshops that were existing, but just marketing them specifically for TAs to reduce that level of like sort of imposter syndrome that they have for showing up.
Okay, there are two comments that I really want to highlight because I think they're important. Someone saying they scan materials for faculty to use in their course shells, but they don't think that the TAs can actually request that particular service. And another person said something, we don't market to TAs at all, but we would not turn away any grad student from anything offered by faculty. Okay. What are unique needs for TAs that library services can address? Are there unique? I mean, maybe are there unique needs for TAs that library services can address?
While y'all are thinking and writing, I'll share that one of the things with our graduate students, they're teaching English 101. They may be in a linguistics program, or they may be in a communications program, or in fine arts and studying poetry, and they're put in the place of teaching science writing. And I saw some folks very early in the chat sort of referencing that, like, yeah, being, tossed into a class to teach that you have never even taken before. And so a lot of our TAs find themselves in this situation. And so we, teaching hundreds of classes every semester, have honestly some more content experience or expertise than these TAs do. And so we're really able to meet the students' needs and help the TAs a little bit. It's one less thing that they have to learn if we can come into their classrooms and talk to their students about finding articles in natural sciences, or how those articles work and look and that kind of thing.
So I'm just going to pull a few that have come in. Opportunities to socialize, interact with grad students, agreed. Community of practice that doesn't include faculty supervisors, amen. And a greater awareness of library policies and services. Oh, yeah, I see. Let me skip. I'm going to stop reading the comments because I want to keep commenting on them, and I need to move on. Okay, so who in your life, so I want to say this. I asked a question about how much is your, who interacts and supports TAs on your campus. I want to differentiate that between who in your library works with graduate students. And I want to acknowledge that that's a big question. Research and instruction. See, someone just said the answer that I wanted. Anyone? Center for Graduate Initiatives. We all do. And I want to make the point that I guess the expectation is that it falls on the liaisons, but honestly, a lot of service points, school communications, etc. Most of research instruction, anyone with a GA. That was part of the consideration that we had to undertake when we wanted to put together the TA toolkit. It definitely originated in our team and in our department, but we had to sit down and really, really think how many people actually interact with graduate students, both as TAs and as graduate students, and making sure that we were pulling them in as we decided to make this into a larger group. And the final question is, ILL, oh my God, ILL. The final question is, what resource limitations do you have in terms of creating something like a toolkit in your library? Time. Time. I want to see if someone else comes up with time, because that was a big one. Effort and time. Oh, the silos. Direct way of communicating with grad students. Trying to differentiate between postdoctoral scholars, part-time instructors, TAs, new huge areas of specialization to support. I will say that, like, at the end of the toolkit, I get hyped with things like that, and everyone else was kind of like falling, and I was like, great, we can do this for faculty too. And then I got a whole bunch of dirty looks afterwards. Yeah. More focus on undergraduate success. All of those spaces. Yes, 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 yes. Okay. Go to the next slide. So we have a website for more information about the TA Toolkit itself. That is what's called a Go link. You just put in go.ntsu.edu. Thank you, Alison. And for more information about the workshops and the TA Toolkit itself. So that is the end of our presentation. You can go to the next slide. If you have any questions, you can feel free to email us, or obviously you can ask right now.
Yeah, and there have been several comments I think we can address here too. One that somebody had just put, postdoctoral scholars and part-time instructors, TAs fall into different patron type personas and they're left out. Yes, we found a wide variety, even between PhD students versus MA students or master's level students, and the level of preparation that they got for this. Zero for PhD students. Some master's students have these like semester long classes, or had some a little more guidance, but the PhD students were pretty much on their own.
And I want to stress that, like, we went into this with the idea that we were creating limitations as to what we could do. And we kind of created our own little outcomes of this is what we want people to come away with relating to library services, because we acknowledge that so many departments and so many teams and so many people have different access points. So what was the thing that we wanted our graduate student TAs to walk away knowing about the library? And that's how we kind of thought about it as a limitation or planned limitation.
And I think the other thing that Sojourna had mentioned was, around silos and thinking about, communicating to students what we do, but also to our colleagues across campus, because there is, you have one interaction with, one librarian. And so everybody sort of assumes, well, that's what that librarian does. And then not realizing that there's a really wide variety of ways that we're meeting student needs. And so I think as much as anything, it's for them to also know they can refer questions like that to the library. And then that we know, there's a whole program of teaching workshops at the graduate student that the grad school offers. Let me refer you to them, and with Delta as well. So it was increasing the communication between our groups that was also really helpful for us, and then again sort of rippled out to the graduate students and the other teaching folks.
Oh, UNLV, they get 2 email addresses, employment and one for students. Oh, wow. That's a load. Okay.
We've talked a good bit about the wellness as an event, and Sojourna mentioned that's a place that the library has staked out. I'll put in the chat our events series that are all wellness focused, and so you can just kind of get a sense of the variety of things that we're doing. And I think a lot of these are fairly low barrier to entry. Some of them are, we have a lot of sort of journaling things. They're doing one on making teas, or, it's been really honestly great for library staff to.
Oh, the library staff are loving these.
We love it. Everybody's like, can I do a wellness event? And sort of like bringing out whatever is their hobby thing. So now we've got, ones on mending, on jewelry making,
the lip balm.
Pet rocks.
Yeah.
They're very highly attended by library staff. And it has been acknowledged that, like, hey, seems like we also need some wellness programming for ourselves.
I will say that the numbers for crafting resilience just keep going up. And we don't actually anticipate them going down anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the first wellness events of the semester was had like 200 people show up. It was not expected.
Not expected at all, in a room that was not anticipated for that size.
So I'm going to scroll back through and see if there are questions we can address, but if anybody wants to drop anything new into the chat, we can address those as well. But thanks for such an active chat. This is great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you both, Alison and Sojourna, for all of this as well. I had a question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Are there any talks about doing some on-demand programming, like kind of having some videos for some of those events that aren't necessarily as in person?
So we actually plan the workshops to be, we record all the workshops, the ones that are done, and we have a system at NC State called Reporter, where people sign up for it and then it gets saved. So anyone who wants it will always have access to it. But you have to be an NC State affiliate in order to get access to it.
That's great. I had some little hearts on your presentation under mental health, definitely heart there. And I love the ripple down effect as well, because that makes perfect sense that undergraduate librarians would do this, because, you know, it benefits everyone that way. So thank you very much. I really love that.
To that point, I'll add that it was we are any one of us, not just undergraduate librarians, but any one of us sort of uniquely situated to talk about sort of teaching, and we had to sort of defend our space a little bit around teaching. That we are supporting so many students who are navigating the assignments that faculty or the TAs are sort of giving them, that we say, like, hey, have you built in some scaffolding for this? Students seem to be struggling with vocabulary around, scholarly literature, around peer review, or, sort of the way that you've articulated the assignment, because, for an undergraduate, they're doing a literature review, but it's not really a literature review, or that kind of thing. And so helping students through that, we now have this perspective that we're part of the feedback loop to say, like, hey, they're really confused about this. We got, we have this many chat questions. There's a theme here that you can like add in and adapt your assignment. And I see other folks also offer assignment consultations, and that's just been a way for us to promote that service, because we can show data on the other end that like students really have questions about this.
And because we all work what's called the Ask Us Desk, which is a 24/5 service, and we don't do the 24/5 piece, but we all have hours on the desk. And what happens is we see not just our English 101, but all of the students who have GTAs or TAs or faculty. So we are able to very actively see some of the larger kind of pressure points in terms of being an undergrad.
Great.
Great.
Well, if there are no more questions or comments, I just want to thank you both again. I thought this was so helpful. We're always trying to find ways to engage our TAs. So I thought this was such a great presentation. So thank you so much. And everyone else, you can hang around, and our next session will start on the hour. Oh, there's a question. Somebody is curious to know if anyone else has a way to recognize excellent teaching provided by grad TAs. Yeah, I don't know if we do here at University of Calgary.
I know, no, I don't know about teaching. I know they do some like local celebrations within like the department that we work with. English 101 is really great about offering sort of praise for each other, and they have their own professional development sort of workshops, and TAs present at those. But that's within that first year writing program. It's not outward like recognized. And then there was a question just above that. I think libraries need to reconsider our staffing structure and services. You talk more about the structure of our programming, I think.
think
So
that's a big
let's
question.
do what?
Okay. I think that's a big question. Okay. I want to break it apart if possible. So first, acknowledging the duplications on campus. I will say that that was one of one of the many positive pieces that came out of the toolkit, was to try to find the duplications, not just within the campus, but within the library itself. We were able to have more planned conversations, especially with our liaison department, about the way that teaching got done, the way that we thought about the differentiation between graduate students as students and graduate students as TAs, and trying to find a line as to where you go for what particular thing. Like that was part of I think one of the good results of this. Our organizational structures amongst lots of libraries are starting to look the same. I would highly agree with that. It's like our directors look at that library and are like, we should do that too. And then it becomes like a huge ripple effect. And that, again, we wanted to recognize a lot of the duplications and see what we could do to streamline this process as much as possible. And that was part of the goal of the toolkit.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask this. Can you talk more about the structure? Now, do you mean the structure of the library or the structure of how we actually planned it? Because we can talk about both. Alison, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that we have been fairly actively working to work with those other liaison, because they're sort of like, so if they're teaching higher level undergraduate students or graduate students, they are curious, like, what have students already been exposed to? And English 101 is sort of where they're exposed to academic writing. And so we've been working with them to share resources, thinking about our curriculum. We have a pretty unique system in that we have a set curriculum for our classes just because we teach so many. So we have it's very assignment based. It's fairly, we have to keep it consistent. And so that's easy for us to then share with the subject liaisons to say, this is generally their introduction to annotated bibliographies. This is generally how we are introducing them to library research or ideas about, how to choose a good topic or how to choose a source for your assignment. And so I think that's been helpful for us to sort of streamline between that so that we can sort of vertically align our curriculum. And actually, I'll see if I can find, but Sojourna led us through this like excellent activity in really defining our learning objectives within our program that then we could share with those subject liaisons to so we can sort of build off of each other.
And in terms of the organizational structure, I think our organizational structure is actually a little bit unique. So we are situated in what the learning spaces and services, meaning that we operate under the spaces and the services. But within learning spaces and services, we all fall under access services or work underneath the umbrella of access services. So it's actually kind of a cross-departmental approach that doesn't always happen. And I do think it makes it easier for us to communicate at a level that other libraries cannot, because we, in addition to being our own department, we fall under another department that tends to do a lot of the public facing pieces of the library. And I think I'm still fairly new, and I should stop lying and say that I'm still kind of new. And I will say that I think our library is in flux. And it has been in flux for a little bit, and I don't anticipate it not being in flux, but I don't think that that's a bad thing. Right. Does that answer the question? I will say that I think this worked because we had done a lot of work in our own department before we went out to the other departments to talk about it. Oh, wow, that doc. I haven't seen that in a while. Okay. We're gonna have to, yeah, okay. Are there any other questions?
I think both of us really just wanted to emphasize that, like, recognizing that everybody is doing so much already, you, and then other people, and the more that you can do to sort of open up those communication lines, and like the coordination was not insignificant, but we were not creating a lot of new things. Bandwidth and limitations were very, very much a part of our planning for this, and thinking, how can we not duplicate efforts? How can we promote what other people are doing and sort of like, sort of uplift the work that's happening on campus in other places?
Our theme this year has been anti-burnout. So what can we do to make sure that we are not burnt out? And I can only speak for myself, but this felt like a very natural way of not duplicating efforts so that we were not burning out. Does anyone want to do a sing-along? No? I offered.
Well, thank you both again.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon.